The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to hear on a beautiful Sonoma morning. Let's see, it's Tuesday, May 7th. Amazing. And Matt Reid, you came over from, well, not just Napa, Calistoga?
Yep, I live in Calistoga, work in St. Helena, and it's a beautiful day to make the drive over to Sonoma Valley.
Excellent. Winemaker and general manager at Benessere?
Benessere?
Benessere.
Take them either way. Benessere.
Benessere. I love it. Yeah. Either or.
And what does it mean?
You said you'd accept.
Benessere? Well-being.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
That's correct. Yeah. It means well-being. It means well-being in the general sense, the broad sense. So, like if you're on welfare, you go to the welfare office. You go to the office of Benessere. Last time I was in Italy, I saw yogurt branded Benessere. It's good for you, I guess.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Winemakers. I'm John Myers with, Bart Hansen is on special assignment. With
Bart's
Chef
doing
Cycle.
Chef Cycle.
Yeah.
If you want to donate money, chefcycle.org.
It's a good thing.
Bart is writing today and tomorrow.
Hungry.
Yeah, and I think Jared Reeves, our friend who's the former chef of the Fairmont at Sonoma Mission Inn, now opening up the new Fairmont down in Long Beach. I believe he's doing Chef Cycle down there as well. So
excellent.
Keep going, guys.
So Brian Casey with me today, and Tristan.
Scholl.
Tristan Scholl.
Master of Italian food and wine.
Pending.
Like
Pending.
Pleasure to be here, gentlemen.
Yes, you've got that radio voice on today.
Well, I learned from the best, John.
Absolutely. NPR, right? Well, welcome, Matt. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me. It's
you
a
brought
pleasure.
great weather. Did you guys get as soaked as we did on Saturday? And wow, what it did for the crops. It's amazing.
Yeah, things look beautiful now. It's nice. It's always
standing
nice to get
up.
A good drink before bloom and everything.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, it wasn't too good here in the tasting house because we were a little limited with outdoor space.
Right.
Batten down the hatches.
We made up for it on Sunday. Tristan didn't get to see most of it. To those of you who have met Tristan before working in the tasting house here, but he was off pouring at Pink Sonoma at Vianza. Was it at Vianza?
Yeah.
So all rosé. I don't know how many different producers were there.
There had to be at least 25. It was...
Yeah.
was
Everyone
pretty amazing.
drinking rosé.
Everybody drinking rosé.
That's amazing.
Yeah, not a red or white in sight.
And thank you for hosting the KSVY party last, what was it?
Oh, we had a lot of fun.
Ooh, yeah. It was a blast. So thank you.
I had no idea that they had
fundraiser.
all these different DJs. I mean, first I expected classic rock because, I know you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they started playing a little bit of new wave from the 80s. And then they started playing some EDM music. And there was a woman singing along with it. And I was like, what the hell are you guys doing at KSVY?
It's a great station. So thank you very much for
was
pouring
fun.
and having us. So, well, Matt, I'm tasting already your Petite Syrah 2013. It's
John, of course, skips
phenomenal.
right to the red.
Well, that's
Right,
okay.
the big red.
Well, I had to. It was sitting here. It was-
John, you got to smell this Aglianico Rosato. It smells freaking amazing.
I shall. I really shall. So, but anyway,
And you guys were talking about Chicago because
Yeah.
I think, Matt, you're originally a Chicago person.
I was born there. It's a little bit difficult to say I'm from there. I've lived there 3 times. I was born there and lived there until I was about 1. Moved back when I was 5 and moved away when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
then, I took a little break in college. So when I was 19, I spent the better part of a year there. And so that's what I best remember it from. But that was a while ago now, I'm afraid. So,
Yeah, no kidding.
and I'm sure it's changed a lot more since then. It's a fun city, though.
Yeah.
oh, it's a great place to visit on an expense account these days.
I bet.
Yeah. So,
I got to get one of those.
Don't we all?
yeah, it's funny living like that. I mean, on the road with my wife when she's on, I get used to that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a nice thing.
Yeah, I bet.
Anyway, so how did you get into wine?
Well, it was thanks to my father, who was also from the Midwest. He grew up in Lima, Ohio. And
Wait, what? Where in Ohio?
Lima.
Lima.
It's,
Okay.
West side.
Okay.
So a couple hours from Cincinnati.
Okay.
Yes, I've been there, but not for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he basically considered himself to be a rube, and decided to change that. So he taught himself how to cook, became quite the accomplished home chef, and also wine was part of that, self-teaching, self-education. And so there was always wine at the dinner table. I was always curious about it. And so I started asking, hey, can I have a taste? Can I have a taste? And probably as young as 5, I started getting that taste. But always, it was a small taste, and then with at least the same amount of water added to it.
Right.
And I knew that wasn't right. I said, it doesn't smell like yours smells like. That's,
Yeah.
And so I ran a campaign from the age of about 5 to the age of about 9. I said, I'm not asking for more. Give me the same small amount, but just don't put the water in it.
Yeah.
And when I was about 9, I won that argument. And so I finally started getting to taste the wines as they're actually supposed to taste. And we moved around a lot as a child, as I sort of alluded to, but it was mostly points east. So the wines on the table were mostly European wines, and so a lot of Spanish wines, a lot of Burgundy and Bordeaux, a lot of Rhone,
Nice.
as well as Italian wines. And so I feel like I got a pretty good education in wine without even meaning to.
Yeah.
It still took me a while to figure out that that's what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah. So why were you guys moving around so much?
My father's an academic. He was getting his PhD when I was born, and then just kept changing jobs. So that finally stabilized. Sort of stabilized. He got a job in the economics department at Virginia Tech, and then that entire department moved to George Mason. So we thought we'd be in Blacksburg, Virginia, for the rest of our lives, but then moved up to Northern Virginia, which was great for me because Blacksburg was a wonderful place to be 8 to 12 or so. But I don't think I would have wanted to stay. And Northern Virginia had a lot more to offer. We were like 5 miles from D.C., and it was fun to check out.
Right.
They're starting to do some good wine in Virginia.
They're not
area.
starting, John.
Okay. All right, let's rephrase that.
There was a guy named Thomas Jefferson, who you might remember, who actually was
Have you tasted
into
any
French
of his wine? How do you know it's any good?
I don't think it was, John. I think he loved Bordeaux varietals. I think he brought some over and tried to plant it at Monticello, and it just never worked
Varying
out.
degrees of failure.
I think one of the Koch brothers actually has like a bottle of wine that was in Thomas Jefferson's cellar or something. Yeah.
And 10 or 12 others that have been proven to be fakes.
Rudy.
Rudy. Where is he now?
I read a interesting book about Jefferson's travels pursuing wine, among other things, in Europe, and the difficulties he had getting it back because bottles weren't really a thing, and neither were containers, on ships. So the barrels are just out on deck, and of course you got thirsty sailors, and they didn't want to get caught, so they'd steal some wine and then fill it up with seawater or bilge water. And Jefferson knew that was going to happen, and so he tacked a note to each of the barrels saying, drink all you want, but don't put anything back. Just leave it as it is.
Right.
I don't know if he was successful or not, but
Good foresight, TJ.
Yeah, I think he was always trying to lower taxes or tariffs on French wine coming in, and it was because he was stocking his own cellar.
right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it wrong?
I mean, everyone was drinking at that time. Everyone was drinking Madeira. I think in the United States, everyone was drinking sweet wine. So he was the one that started introducing.
Don't we know somebody who's looking at land
in Virginia? I don't know that we know this person, but one of the Enterprise Vineyards people just moved there, and Phil did go do a little inspection of a vineyard site there. But it's just like everywhere else, John. I think if you can find a grape that fits your particular area as far as microclimate, and then game on. I have nothing wrong with Texas wine, Virginia wine, Arizona.
How about Missouri?
Missouri wine, bring it on.
Iowa?
If you
Hey, I'm an Iowa kid.
And remember, you can make wine out of everything. I think I've heard, Matt, that you used to be into fruit fermentations, and you had made some wine out of, I think you said strawberries and watermelon were actually pretty good, but the grapefruit, not so much.
Grapefruit was a challenge. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I actually still make fruit wine almost every year. It depends on how many blackberries I can collect, because that's my favorite one to work with on the regular.
Nice.
But yeah, I started doing it because once I started making wine at home without any vision that I'd become a professional winemaker. It was just
And where is this?
In San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was close enough to up here, and knew people who knew people. I could get grapes, second crop kind of thing. And the grape wines I made back then weren't terribly good because it was second crop, and for probably other reasons too. But we'll blame it on that. Yeah. But I was like, well, I really enjoyed it. I really loved making the wine, and I didn't want to wait a year to do it again. And so, why not just make wine from fruit? And great to go out and pick blackberries or whatever, but also, the frozen fruit at the grocery store. It all worked. And it was one day I was there's a farmer's market in San Francisco that's open to the public down on Alamany, but it's mostly for restaurants. And so they have much bigger operations. And I got a gallon of pomegranate juice for like $8. And I'm just gonna ferment it, and I did. And it was good, except that the acid was crazy high, and I didn't know enough about like deacidification. So it tasted amazing, but it kind of hurt at the same time.
Well, speaking of gaining knowledge in that area, you went to UC-Davis, graduated 2003?
That's correct. Yeah, did the master's program there. By the time I decided that this is what I wanted to do with my life, I was rather advanced. Now I say that in my 50s. I've been laughing that I was, not even 30, but I was married. I had a mortgage. I couldn't just go up and be a cellar rat. I needed to start a little higher closer to the top. So everybody advised me to go to Davis. That was after I said, well, what about sales? That seems like it would be easier to get into. And they're like, you'd be terrible at sales. And they were right.
Know thyself.
Right?
Oh, absolutely, Tristan. I'm not a winemaker. I'm not a cellar rat, but I can sell it. So
good for you.
Yeah.
You have to sell. You do have to sell, don't you?
I know that's the hard part, John. It's fun making wine and fun talking about wine, but
it's fun selling it.
So, if you like what you're selling, I agree.
Amen.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you did not like what you were selling?
I've been lucky enough to work at places where I had that freedom to sell whatever I wanted to, as, working in restaurants that, I've never been put in a position where I was a rep for a specific, and that's why I would never work for, one of the big distributors, because there's like quotas and things where they say you have to get rid of this much wine or something. I wouldn't be able to do it, because I think people pick up when you're talking to them about a wine, if it's genuine and authentic, your excitement about the wine. And I can't fake that. I even, will dissuade people from wine actively if I'm not on board with it.
Tristan, you?
Thus far in my relatively brief wine career, I've had the good fortune of working with and only selling wine that I also really enjoy drinking and can talk very truthfully about. So I kind of rue the day that I have to not stand by a product that I don't really believe in.
Well, so Brian, when you're in hospitality and somebody orders just like something is just not good, do you dissuade them?
No. If they have money and they have their mind made up that they want to drink, I always just try to, people are coming here to visit and they want to drink Caymus and Jordan and Chateau Montelena and Silver Oak, and there's nothing wrong with them wanting to drink those wines. But I remember an experience I had in Italy. My wife and I were in Rome sitting at one of these little alley restaurants. I remember truffles, the smell of truffles everywhere, and I tried to order a bottle of it was Sassicaia or something, and the server said, "Do you want to try a much better wine for like a third of the price?" And I remember that. And I tried to do that for people when they would come visit here, that, hey, do you want to actually know another wine that you might really enjoy if you like Cabernet, if you like whatever, Syrah, that I personally think is better. And then I would downsell them. But they appreciate that. And then you get the trust. And next thing you know, then they're they're drinking Donna Fogata Benessere with dessert, and they're, the food recommendations they're taking you up on. So, it's just building a little bit of trust. And like I said, people feel that genuineness.
Well, yeah, you're an honest guy too.
Yeah.
You should let your opinion be known, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Somebody bought that. I mean, we know people who run restaurants and do wine lists and things like that. I can't imagine anybody actually goes out to put something on a list that is not really high quality. But I'm sure that there are, as in your quotas from a big company, you got to sell this stuff. So we've got it. We'll pay you an extra spiff or whatever,
And I fight. I used to fight. I remember fighting Rombauer Chardonnay for the longest time at the Fairmont for like 2 years. I was like, I totally refused to put it on the list. And then after a while, I just said, why am I the gatekeeper? If people like Rombauer Chardonnay and they want to drink it, and even if they want to put a couple ice cubes in it, like who the
people
fuck am I to tell them? As long as they're drinking wine, as long as you kick that Truly and White Claw out of their hand and put some wine in their hand, then I'm on board now.
Roundhouse the White Claw out of here.
Yeah, White Claw. Never had one. Have you?
I have. It tastes just like a seltzer water. I don't really get the point. You can drink a seltzer water and have a glass of wine.
Well, I also wonder about these canned cocktails. I mean, can a screwdriver or cranberry and vodka out of a can taste at all palatable? I just haven't had one.
They have their place, and there are certain companies that actually do good ones. And I think if you're something like out at the food truck for live music,
all right,
and you can't set up an entire bar out there, but someone wants an old fashioned or a Negroni, or it's not bad. It's not the same, but it's not bad. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'll let you go on that.
All right, Matt. So you're at UC-Davis.
Yeah.
Are you, while you're still there, actively looking for a place to land when you graduate?
I tried. I was actively looking, yes. I didn't have much success.
Because what year is this?
2003 was when I graduated.
Okay.
And I was always drawn, we were talking about Walla Walla before we started recording. I love it up there. And Anderson Valley is a wonderful place. I did my research at Davis. I did up in the Sierra foothills. That was the kind of region I was more drawn to, not, Napa, in other words, was not the top of my list.
Yeah.
And some of that was that I didn't really know what Napa was about, but some of it was I did know what Napa was about, right? And this it's, big money, big egos, not my style. But first of all, back to your point, I lined up an internship at Navarro in Anderson Valley.
Oh, cool.
And I thought that would be a lot of fun. I loved the wines then and love them still. And, they work with a broad range of varieties, so I thought that would be really cool. And, I called up Jim Klein, the winemaker, and he said, sure, come on out. And then he called me a month later, and he said, are you sure you want to come to Anderson Valley? There's nothing here. You'll be bored. I was like, well, I'll be working. I won't have time to be bored. I'll be working all the time, right? And he said, okay. And he called back again, a month later. And this was probably like March at this point. He's like, same deal. And by the third or fourth call, I was like, I don't think he wants me to come.
I know.
So maybe I'm just going to look for something else. And I did. I've since gotten to know Jim and gotten to know the owners of Navarro as well. And we've sort of laughed about that because Jim was not trying to softly turn me down. He didn't regret having told me I could come work. He was quite honest, like there's nothing to do in Anderson Valley. Yeah. And I did know that. I'd spent plenty of time up there and it didn't bother me, but so I just misinterpreted it, I guess, and therefore missed out on the chance to work out there. Yeah. Anyway, instead I worked the harvest at Artesa, which was interesting. I mean, again, a wide variety of wines produced and very interesting winemaking style.
Wait, what does that mean?
Well, so, they've, I guess they've been a little more stable of late, but they used to have a lot of turnover in the winemaking department. And the assistant winemaker who hired me for that internship wasn't there by the time I started. Don von Staveren was the winemaker at the time, and he was still there. And, he had just come over from Chateau Saint Jean, where he'd gotten Wine Spectator Wine of the Year for Saint-Cepage. And so I knew about that and was excited, I'm going to learn a lot from him. Yep. Well, his... he was great. We walked around, we tasted every day. Like, he would take all the interns and we'd go through and we'd taste all the tanks with him. He wouldn't listen to our opinions, but we could listen to his and hear the decisions he was making based on what he was tasting and all that. And that was super cool. But his main role, the role he assigned himself in winemaking, was operating the bin dumper. And which I just thought, okay, that's kind of fun. You got a little control box and wiggle things around, but I'd rather be doing something else, which is why I'm not him, I guess. But so that was interesting. It was really fun too. As the interns started drifting away, I was the one that kept longest, and they probably still do produce a dessert wine, a Botrytis dessert wine, and I was basically just given that. I was put in charge of that, and of course they were looking over my shoulder and all that, but that was really fun.
Wasn't your wife working with you?
She was.
Yeah.
And she got hired away during the harvest. Artesa was okay with it, but Napa Wine Company scooped her up, and she went to the lab there and worked there for a couple years. But meanwhile, she'd gotten a real job, and I was still looking for a real job. We were living in the city of Napa, and finally, a Davis connection came through for me and hooked me up with a position at Clos de Bois up in Geyserville. And it was nice to have a real job. There was a lot I got out of that experience. Mostly, I learned that the corporate winemaking world is not for me.
Yeah.
But it was still really interesting, and again, just to see how you do all this stuff. They at the time were producing 1 million cases of Chardonnay, and that's difficult to do, right? And they bottled the same Chardonnay, 20 whatever Chardonnay, same label, same everything. They bottled it 5 different times, and so they came up with 5 different blends. And I remember asking the winemaker, well, how do you do it so that like blend 5 by the time it's released is going to taste like blend 1 tasted on release? He said, I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. That's interesting.
Well, the price point was right. I remember selling that wine back in the late 80s at restaurants I was working at, and it was really popular.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, people loved it.
Have they changed so much in, 40 years?
I haven't had a bottle of Clos de Bois in a long time. I just remember that when I first started selling it, it was at a restaurant called De Schmeer in Petaluma, and we had a lot of dairy farmers. And they would order the Clos de Bois Chardonnay,
Right.
and I would never correct them. I would bring it back, and I'd say, here's your Clos de Bois Chardonnay. You didn't want to seem like the uppity kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Close to
But we
Bois.
sold a ton of that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah,
Hey, makes people happy.
that's right. That's right. So how long did you end up staying with them?
6 months.
Oh, okay.
I got out. I thought I left in June, which I hoped was enough time for them to be able to replace my position, which wasn't a very important position anyway. But they were still kind of mad at me. But in that 6 months, I realized that my 65-minute each way commute from Napa to Geyserville was not working. And so we looked for something as close to the middle between Oakville and Geyserville as we could find, and that turned out to be Calistoga. And that's what got us to Calistoga and got us stuck. We didn't think we'd stay in Napa long. We thought we'd go on to Anderson Valley or the foothills or Walla Walla or someplace like that. Not after finding Calistoga. We fell in love.
Oh, Calistoga is awesome.
Yeah.
Little place. I mean, tiny.
It is.
What, maybe a couple thousand people on the list up there?
It's up to 5,000 now.
Oh, really?
And we've got a lot of housing being built right now, so we might be pushing 6 pretty soon. But it's still
Catch
still
up
charming.
with Sonoma right away.
Right.
And my sister was the same. I think my sister moved up there because during the pandemic, they did everything. I don't think she's gone back to work yet. I think July they're supposed to go back to work, but she was living in Sausalito because she was working at Marin in San Francisco, and then she found Calistoga, and I don't think she's going to move. She loves it.
Yeah, well, she's found a
Why?
great community.
I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's beautiful. And you're like on the school board and all kinds of stuff. You're
Right.
you're in. You're not moving.
A pillar of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys just had a fundraiser on Sunday. Can you just kind of briefly tell people what you guys were doing?
Sure. Yeah. Well, your sister was instrumental in organizing it, and it came off just wonderfully. She did a great job. Calistoga's high school has a class. It's a single class, but all 4 grades are in it. 32 students total, and it's the Lemelson MIT Inventeams class. And so it's a curriculum developed by MIT, and schools have to apply to be part of this program. And Calistoga High was one of 8 schools in the country chosen to do this. They are supposed to. My daughter signed an NDA right away, and I didn't get to sign the NDA until just a couple of months ago. So
Wait,
she couldn't even talk to me about it.
What?
Because
Wait, how old is she?
She's 15 now. Yeah,
You can make minors sign an NDA?
Mm-hmm. You can. And the reason they had to do that is the goal of the class is to develop inventions that can be patented. And so they don't want this stuff leaking out. And so they've got 2 inventions in the works. They just got another grant. Microsoft is paying for their patent lawyer to file the patents. The kids will all have their names on the patents, assuming they're granted, certainly on the patent applications. Wow. It's pretty wild. And then MIT invites all 8 schools out in the second week of June to show off their inventions. And I believe it's something of a competition, like one school will be dubbed the winner, or one invention will be dubbed the best invention, something like that. But the real point is the kids get to go out there and spend some time at MIT, tour around Boston, that kind of thing. But MIT doesn't pay for that. So the fundraiser we did on Sunday was to raise money for the travel and the expenses and all that. And we really lucked out. Saturday, the day before, we got over an inch of rain, and it was cold and miserable. And we woke up Sunday to beautiful blue skies and just a beautiful day. So fortune smiled upon us. It was great, and the fundraiser was very successful. It raised. I haven't heard an official number yet, but the unofficial number I heard was more than they needed for the entire trip.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Treat kids like they're smart.
And make them sign NDAs.
Right.
Can we talk about the rosé a little bit?
Yeah. Very interesting. Good.
Yeah. So this is a Aglianico rosé, or rosato, as it would be called in Italian. Aglianico, for those listeners who may not know, is a grape indigenous to southern Italy. It just makes incredible wines. I think they're mostly red. Only a handful of rosatos are produced to my knowledge. I recently heard about a sparkling rosato of Aglianico, and I think I'm going to be making one this year.
I've never had this.
For that.
Are you familiar with this grape?
Only in passing, and in the various interviews I've been doing for my thesis around Sonoma, Napa, and points further south. It's fun. A lot of the best Italian varietal makers today in California think it has the potential to, and this is a contentious point of view, but maybe weather our sort of increasingly common global weirding events in Napa Valley than Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc, the traditional Bordelais varietals.
I agree, definitely. It is, it's indigenous to southern Italy, which is hot. It's a late ripening grape there. It needs the heat to ripen. Where we have it growing at our state vineyard in St. Helena is really close to the hottest point in Napa Valley, and I think that does it well. It's late ripening for us as well. We're so at the moment, as of now, to the best of my knowledge, Benessere is the only producer of Aglianico in Napa Valley. But I do know that Larkmead planted a few years ago. They planted what they called a climate change block, with just small plantings of various varieties to see how these things did. And Aglianico is in there. And I was talking with somebody at Larkmead the other day and learned that their 2023 they will be bottling it. So soon we won't be the only producer of Aglianico in Napa Valley, but that's okay because I'm really curious to try theirs. Right?
That's awesome.
And what's kind of the characteristics of Aglianico when you make a red out of it?
Yeah.
It's high tannin?
Super high tannin.
Right.
It's big tannin, and I guess that's the sense in which it's late ripening that, and then it's slow to accumulate sugar, which is great because otherwise, by the time those tannins were ready to make wine from, we're soft enough to make wine, sugar would be through the roof. But we usually pick it at 24 and a half. And the tannins are definitely present. But and it's a flavor profile. So I've been making it since 2013, and I still struggle with my tasting notes because it's just so different than the wines I'm used to. So, but it's fun. A lot of huckleberry notes come up sometimes, and definitely blueberry. Yeah, and it's really just a rich big wine.
Which vineyard is this?
This is from our estate vineyard.
Okay.
And so we have been producing Rosato since the beginning, but it's always been from Sangiovese. My cellar master is a wonderful person. He's also a very curious person who likes to play around with things. And the way our crush pad is set up, we lose a lot of juice just in the processing. And we usually collect it in buckets just so that it doesn't make a mess. But then the buckets, we just dump them down the drain. Well, for the last few years, he's been collecting certain buckets and making rosé out of them because, the fresh juice doesn't have much color. So a couple of years ago, he did that with our Aglianico, and then he was super excited about the results and, shared it with us all. And we're like, we should do this. We should make this. And so we actually, I don't remember what the phrasing is, but he's listed on the back label. I didn't bring my glasses, but this enticing one-of-a-kind wine is the inspiration of our cellar master, Joel Guzman. And, so to honor his creativity there.
Yeah, so what is, and I know we're going to talk about the People's Wine Revolution wines, but what is Benessere kind of focused on Italian varietals, but then also being in Napa making Cabernet as well?
Yeah, that's a good nutshell description. The owners bought the property in 1994 and planted in 96. And the idea back then even was to focus on Italian varieties. They did, though, bring in Dan Duckhorn as a vineyard consultant, and we're about a mile from the Three Palms vineyard, so I think he thought, hey, this might be good for Merlot, too. Yeah. So 10 of our 30 acres were planted to Merlot when I got there. And so we mostly sold we sold the grapes to Duckhorn for a long time. But we have been replanting, and the idea is to really double down on the Italian focus. That's what we're about. It's what we want to do. So we'll probably always make Cabernet Sauvignon because it's Napa Valley and it's expected. Yeah. But in addition to the Sangiovese, Pinot Grigio, Sagrantino, and Aglianico that we've been producing, we're going to continue with all of those, but we have already added Primitivo and Montepulciano, and in the ground but not yet bearing is Vermentino, Falanghina, Nero d'Avola, and Troldigo. So really excited about all those, and that's only halfway through the replant. So we'll see how we do with these and what the response is like, and then maybe in the next phase we'll get even weirder.
Oh, that's exciting.
You had made the comment about finding the hottest spot to grow this.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where it's growing, is the hottest spot on the
How do you determine that?
Just weather data.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's not like they were looking for the hottest spot, but and the Benish family, the owners of Benessere, didn't. We only planted our own Aglianico in 2018. We have a long relationship with the Collins family, who have a vineyard. They're the founders of Concrete Winery, and their vineyard is across the street from us. And they took a trip to Italy, fell in love with Aglianico, and brought back cuttings the proper way, through FPS, Foundation Plant Services, made sure they all got cleaned up and then planted them. And so it was their Aglianico we were using for a long time. We still buy their Aglianico. Unfortunately, they had to pull it all due to red blotch in 2018. That's why we planted some. But they now have it back, and we still take it all.
Yeah.
Because
kind of like the behind the curtain thing about being in Napa is that you get so much more money for growing Cabernet, right? The cost per ton. True. And so it's a little bit challenging when you kind of veer off course and want to do some unique varietals, because if you're doing the same amount of farming, the same amount of labor, you're not charging $150 for this bottle of Aglianico Rosato. Right. So how do you guys, does a family have, they're just passionate and have a little bit of money where they can do what they want to do?
Yeah.
That's nice.
That is the case, and it is nice. That's great. It's also, it would be nice to do better financially. I'm sure we'd all like that. Yeah. But I'm not sure that just being, the 540th winery focused on Napa Cabernet would make that any easier.
Yeah.
Well said.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It makes me always go back to think about the money, and talking to Andy Beckstoffer, where when he came out to Napa, the government set the prices. It was like an official crop report. Napa Valley Cab at $700 a ton, or cheaper at that time. And he was the one who made it valued into something. So the farmers get what they deserve. Did you see the article in Wine Business Monthly about the biggest landowners in Napa Valley just recently?
That, yeah.
Very interesting. Andy was like number 10. I thought he had a lot more than he did, but it's Constellation, of course, is the first one,
Yeah.
And Gallo's not even in the top 3 or 4. It's pretty amazing.
Some people, I think Treasury is a good example, is sort of getting out of California, and I think they're moving up to Washington, and realize, and just having come back from there, I get it. I think Columbia Valley is going to be a great spot for Cabernet in the United States, and I think Walla Walla and that area, Milton Freewater, is an incredible place for Syrah and Grenache, and that's not quite big enough to handle the people just moving to Napa, but Columbia Valley, I mean, there's a lot of space, and you can get land for, I'm sure, a lot less expensive than you're getting it over in Napa. And with climate change, I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think Napa is, in flux right now. I feel like there's, especially with the G-men, the FBI in town for some reason, and
big mystery.
Yeah, I think
Pardon
there's.
me. Let's talk
We're
about
not.
this.
None of us know.
I can't shed any light. I just know that a number of winery owners, a former county supervisor, and who else have been subpoenaed or offices searched by FBI, and FBI apparently is not telling them what they're looking for, or if they are telling them, they're also telling them you can't tell anybody what we're looking for. So mum has been the word. We just know who.
Price fixing.
I mean, I don't know
fentanyl in
being
the wine?
that it's the FBI, like it's not the IRS. If it was the IRS, I could say, okay, maybe they're looking at some of these places that aren't profitable and wondering if that's intentional or if it's just a passion project. But being that it's the FBI, who knows, John? We're all kind of waiting to see what the results are.
The other shoe to drop, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I had asked about finding the hot spot in that vineyard, how is climate change affecting you right there? How do you see it, and what are you guys planning on?
Those are great questions, and I wish I had better answers. I track things. I'm a data geek. I think a lot of winemakers are, and I can certainly
My
see...
favorite winemakers are data geeks.
Right?
I love it.
I'm also a weather geek, as also most winemakers are. Yeah. Obviously there are years that don't quite fit the curve, but there's definitely a visible curve if you look at our harvest dates, the start and end dates of harvest, or look at a particular variety. When did we harvest it each year over the since I've been there, and everything's getting earlier. There's that is definitely the trend. There's no question about that. Weather-wise, we've been through. Seems like we're on a brief hiatus from our drought, but we had a lot of drought issues. 3 really difficult years, and that California's always had drought cycles, but I think it's reasonable to expect them to get worse, longer and more intense. We are very fortunate at our site. We're right next to the Napa River, which helps cool things down a little bit, but we're still a very warm site. But we also have good groundwater. As Napa County seems to think it does, period, whether or not they're correct. I know the state is starting to require groundwater monitoring, and Napa's fighting hard against that. I think they'll lose, but it'll slow it down probably.
At least it's not sinking yet.
Right? Not yet. Yeah. Unlike some other places in California.
Well, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Like a foot.
Right? So, there's not a lot we can do. Sure, we can look towards different varieties that might be better suited, such as Aglianico. And part of that is also going to be educating our customers, right? You know, maybe you should start branching out from Cabernet and keep enjoying your Cabernet, but try something else while you're at it. But, you know, the other thing we can do is just take care of our environment as best we can. And we just, one of the many hats I wear well, this one I don't wear too well. I'm an associate director of Napa's Resource Conservation District. And I've been so busy I haven't really been carrying my weight on that lately. But they have some grant money to do things like put in hedgerows and insectaries and stuff like that. And so we've gotten that approved. We're going to build a long hedgerow along the back of our vineyard that'll be full of native plants that pollinators will like, and hopefully that will help cool things, be helpful to wildlife.
Yeah.
Well, you're also a member of Napa Green, who are friends of the podcast.
We're a failed member. We got kicked out.
Ouch. Okay.
No, we're certified in Napa Green when qualifying for fish-friendly farming was sufficient to get the Napa Green certification.
Okay.
And Napa Green has since tightened the rules for the better. I think it's great that the new rules are wonderful. I'm a supporter. Unfortunately, we have not kept up, and there's 7 people at Benessere, working, and it's just a lot to do. Yeah. And Napa Green is great, and they're willing to help. And I think this project with RCD is maybe a first step towards getting back enrolled on their good list.
Yeah.
We'll try.
I saw a staggering figure for the number of Sonoma wineries that are at least sustainable and regenerative the other day. I mean, it was...
those are very different.
I totally understand. Yeah. I do. But at least it's movement in the right direction. Nah.
I'm gonna...
I mean, Benessere has had their sustainability up there for decades, right?
They've been Demeter certified for, since the early 2000s or something for biodynamic. Yeah. And then, our friends at Gunlock Bunch who just got their regenerative certification, which is great. But, most people are on the sustainable model and Sam's not here. I would let him speak to that. His family is in organic farming. I think out of all the vineyards in Sonoma County, I think 16600 or Enterprise Vineyards farms something like 60 or 70% of the certified organic vineyards. So that's a really impressive number until you tell people that only about 5% of the vineyards in Sonoma County are certified organic. So
big bite of the small piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So where's the growth next? How do you move everybody in that direction?
Well, I mean, that's part of what Napa Green, I think, by taking the steps that they have is helping people farm better. And if it's a cost thing, then it's a cost thing. But I think everyone knows that farming organically is a good thing. I just don't think everyone's able to do it or willing.
And there is a lot of confusion among the consumers about what these sustainability labels mean. CCOF organic is pretty well understood, I should hope, or at least in California.
Well, aren't there new regulations that just came out that are much stricter in terms of organic certification?
I don't know.
Not aware.
Yeah.
Matt, I want to circle back a little bit to just your unique varietal profile at Benessere because, for one thing, I've been studying it for the last 6 to 8 months rather intensely, and I think particularly Italian producers in Napa are unique, and you guys are certainly unique. Outside of Steve Mathias, and we'll have to set up a time to talk sometime in the next few weeks, but some of the only, certainly with Sagrantino. I've talked to Ken Warnick at Sonokaya, but very, very small number of producers in California. I think Italian producers in Napa had to struggle for years just to liberate themselves from sort of the stigma of the Calital Consortium, in spite of some producers doing really great Sangiovese in the 90s. I think when Antinori and Atlas Peak got out of it in 92, even before the wave, it's kind of the writing was on the wall, and you can't crop at 9 tons an acre, make a vapid wine, and charge $60 a bottle for it in 1995. Whereas a lot of other producers around the state have sort of tuned varietal to terroir. I think that's been a greater struggle in Napa, so it's so cool to see you guys embracing these varietals that work well there. Could you talk a little bit about the Sagrantino and which varietals do particularly well, which ones you found more challenging?
Yeah. And it's interesting matching it to the terroir because the varieties that we are already producing at Benessere and will be soon producing, come from all over Italy. And so, what's the common ground? Why are they doing so well in St. Helena? And I think they are.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to explore that more. Particularly, I'm really intrigued by the Tirol-de-Go, and I really want to see what that does because there are all these Tirol-de-Go, and I'll get back to Sagrantino, I promise. Tirol-de-Go, is from the foothills of the Dolomites, basically, and it seems like every valley, in the Italian Alps, has its own indigenous varieties, red and white. And they're just wild stuff. Although they all tend to be, I think of the typical cool climate red as being a lighter wine, but Tirol-de-Go, Lagrein, these are big, burly wines. Yeah. And so, first of all, I wonder about that. Second of all, I wonder if they're all the same. They just have different names, these different guys. But they're grape DNA researchers out there who can answer those questions. But it's going to be interesting to see how Tirol-de-Go does. We're not in the foothills of anything on the floor, so we'll see. But I'm excited. But Sagrantino is indigenous to Umbria, and you probably know more about this story than I do, Tristan. But until about 1992, more or less, the DOC for Sagrantino was for a sweet wine, a dessert wine. Yeah. And my theory, I don't even know where to begin researching this. But it is also a late ripener with very big tannins. But Umbria is not southern Italy. It's mountainous and relatively cool as Italy goes. And so my guess is that they had trouble ripening the tannins to the point where they could make a palatable red wine. So they're like, well, let's just leave some sugar in to cover it up. Yeah. That's my guess. And so in the 90s, a DOCG was created for a dry red wine. And my guess is that had to do with better education and winemakers, getting better skills, and grape growers getting better skills, trying to figure out how to manage those tannins better before it comes into the winery, and then manage them once they're in the winery. But so we're not a hilltop vineyard, very different than Umbria, and yet the Sagrantino just does really well, and I love it on its own. There's even in Umbria, it's relatively rare, so there's a DOCG for 100% Sagrantino, but the more common wine is just Rosso di Montefalco, which is, I think, can be as much as 80% Sangiovese, a high percentage at any rate. And so just a splash of Sagrantino in there, but it's so fun on its own. A really neat wine. It also it and the Aglianico really require a lot of aging, in my opinion. And I was frustrated. I have yet to go to Umbria. I really want to go, but I was last in Campania, one of the many places where Aglianico is grown, a few years ago, and I was so excited to try all these Aglianicos I couldn't get here. I couldn't get them there either. I think most of the higher end Aglianicos are exported. Actually. Oh wow! Yeah. And what was frustrating is, I was prepared to drop some coin and get something really good. Maybe I'd spend $80, €80 there for something that would be $300 here or something like that. Right? It was my thinking. I had a hard time finding anything over €20. And most of the wines I found, Aglianico was 1 year old, and it was on the grocery store shelf for like €6 or €7, and I was like, I tried one just because, and it tasted exactly like I thought it would. Like, this wine shouldn't have been put in bottle; it's nowhere close to ready. So that was disappointing.
Is it just resolving those tannins? It just needs more time.
It just needs time.
Yeah, which is tough. You're already dealing with, when you're making red wine, and especially dealing with Cabernet, you're already looking at from time pick to release. I mean, you're looking at 3 years pretty much, right? Yeah. I mean, in most cases. And then when you start talking about something that may require
another 4 or 5 at least,
another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm excited. Next Friday, we're doing a retrospective tasting of both Aglianico and Sagrantino at the winery. And we haven't decided. Tomorrow, we're going to sit down and taste through some of the back vintages and decide which wines we're going to do, open for that. Yes. But I'm really excited to
Wait, is this a staff thing?
It's a staff thing tomorrow. You want to come and help, though? You probably.
I'm just wondering. I know Tristan's probably like, what day is that? Where do I show up?
Oh, you're welcome anytime. We'll
thank you.
come up and
Thank you.
we'll taste through
Awesome.
some weird stuff.
Fabulous. Love that.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about
This wine. yeah.
People's Wine Revolution, which my sister handed me a bottle of the 2013 Petit Syrah, which John couldn't wait this morning, so he went ahead and opened that up
sorry,
before
what
you
can I
even got
say?
here.
Good breakfast, Petite Syrah.
So you and tell us, you're working at Benessere, but you also have other stuff going on, right? So
Yeah, I have a handful of consulting clients. They're mostly really small. And, it's mostly growers in like either home vineyards or they're selling their crop to like Duckhorn, for example. But they want to see, from there it goes into a big blend. They want to know what their grapes taste like on their own. So they hired me to make the wine for them, that kind of thing. But all pretty small. It's fun, but small. Yeah. My wife and I started this label, PWR, the People's Wine Revolution, when we realized we were not going to leave Napa Valley. And it was a response to the limited palette that was open to us. Like we were basically making Cabernet and Chardonnay and maybe some Merlot, all wonderful wines, but there's more to life. And also the wines we were making were really expensive. Usually the winemaker gets 50% off, and even then I was like, oh, special occasion, right? So we wanted. I've always thought that everybody should be able to afford great wine, and then if you spend, I used to say $10, and I got to say 20.
cheers to that.
Right? if you spend $20 at the grocery store and you don't know what you're getting, it ought to be good, right? I mean, $20 ought to get you a good bottle of wine. You shouldn't be disappointed, and that's not so easy. With this brand, I keep the prices as low as I can. My retail price is now $20. I wish it were lower. But as low as I can. And even though I'm making like 200 cases a year, I'm not solving that grocery store problem. But still, there is a great wine out there that you can get for $20. So,
And how many wines are you making under this label?
it's a moving target. I think it's about 4 right now. I do a Viognier from Rutherford.
Viognier from Rutherford.
Yeah. Another grower. So the family's called it's Avenali Vineyard, the Avenali family, and it's a big, I don't know how big, but probably 40-acre vineyard, but it's all cab that goes to somebody big. And so the family decided they wanted a little Viognier for themselves, and so they planted just one tiny section. It would almost fit in this tent that we're sitting in.
Wow.
But then they needed somebody to make it for them. So I make it for them. They get some of the wine, and then I get to do what I want with the rest.
Nice.
Yeah. I also brought a Grenache that comes from a vineyard in the Cape Valley, or the Cape Valley is the name of the AVA, but this is actually up on the Berryessa Ridge. Can't quite see Lake Berryessa because it's not at the top of the ridge. But it was frustrating. It's frustrating for me because it's 18 miles in a straight line from my house in Calistoga to this vineyard, but it's a 2-hour drive.
Right.
Gotta love this intercoastal range.
Right.
Yeah, helicopter would be a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Helicopter would be the secret. I have to ask Heidi Barrett a favor. Right.
I know. Does she live in Calistoga too? Okay, yeah, because I think she's my sister's water yoga instructor or something.
She's great. She's really fun. She's at all the community events, and then you see her go off in her little helicopter up over the hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Jess Jackson is the only person I ever knew that had a helicopter because he landed at Benessere one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you
Decide if he wanted to buy Arrowwood.
How the hell do you land at Benessere?
At Imagery, actually.
Okay.
The phone rang, and I happened to be the
go.
one that answered the phone, and it was someone that said, "Can Jess come land in your parking lot?" Because I think he was looking at Arrowwood.
Wow.
Right next door.
And I said,
He liked what he saw.
"Sure, I guess." Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I remember going to Arrowwood in, I don't know, the late 80s. Back when it was really good. It's hard to buy a wine brand and keep the name, do things differently, I think. Amapola Creek, is that sold?
Richard moved to Idaho. I think he's hunting and
no longer involved in
doing his own thing.
Well, that's good.
So honestly, I don't know, John.
Well, it's like Mark Pope from the Bounty Hunter.
Right.
sold his place in Wyoming, and now he's down on Pikes Peak having a good time. So,
Wow.
hey, you have to hand it to people who make the money, take the money, and do exactly what they want.
Yeah, for sure.
So I love this. People that aren't winemakers know Grenache doesn't throw a lot of color, right? So when you see a dark Grenache, that meant long soak time with skins, or maybe they added something else to it. I love the color on this.
Yeah, it's 100% Grenache. I got lucky. Well, it helps that there's a purple tablecloth underneath it.
Right?
But,
There's a reason for that.
Right? Look at that, John. It's so pretty.
yeah.
It's gorgeous.
And yeah, I've tried so this is the third different Grenache vineyard I've worked with. And this is the Grenache I've been trying to make the whole time. I really feel like I succeeded with this one. So I'm really, really happy with it. But like at some point with the previous vineyards I've worked with, I was like, let's just go longer in the skins. I want more color.
Yeah.
Looking at it, it's like there's no more color to come out.
Yeah.
It's just, so it is what it is. But yeah, it's a fun variety to work with. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up tasting Chateauneuf du Pape at dinner, and so that's sort of my lodestar. And that's rarely 100% Grenache, but when you're working in small lots like I am, I can't really do a lot of blending. So
Yeah. What do you do with it when you bring it in from the vineyard?
Ooh. Yeah, so this is pretty straightforward. If you'd asked me about some of the other wines, I might have had a more interesting story. But this just destem into tank, and go from there. No cold soak even. I figure I'm not worried. I feel like if it's going to extract because there's no alcohol, then when there's alcohol, it's going to fall out. I get why people do long cold soaks or the other end, extended maceration, or both.
Yeah.
But for me, I just let's just get the fermentation started before something bad can happen, and then press it when it tastes right.
Yeah.
So 12 to 14 days on the skin. Because 21 was a while ago, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And then
and you're making a wine it's an everyday drinking wine.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah, no, I love this. This is everything you want in Grenache. This has got all the Grenache flavor, and it's this
really does
great acidity to it, and so putting it in screw cap, conscious decision, I assume.
Yeah. One of the things we learned about TCA, the cork taint chemical at Davis, of course, but I didn't know that one of my jobs as a winemaker would be cork trials, evaluating corks to look for TCA. And of course, TCA is what we're looking for, and we don't want it. And if you find it, you reject that cork lot. But what was a surprise to me was that, and these cork trials I'm describing, in case people don't know, we take samples that we trust are representative from the batch of cork we might actually buy, put them in a wine glass, put in either some neutral white wine or some diluted alcohol, to wine strength alcohol, cover them with a watch glass, come back the next morning and sniff through to look for TCA. But what I also found, I rarely found TCA, thank God, but I would find, this one kind of smells like vanilla, or this one kind of smells like orange, this one kind of smells like mothballs, this one they all smell different. They're all flavors. Some of those flavors are pleasant. Some of them might be pleasant, but not what you want in your wine necessarily.
And all from the same...
all the same batch of corks.
Okay.
And so... I want the wine that the consumer tastes to taste like the wine that I made. I don't want some random factor added because I put a cork in the bottle. Yep. So that's the main reason I went with screw caps. I had already started making wine under screw cap when I tasted what was then the oldest wine under screw cap I had tasted at that point, which was 10 years old. And I was blown away. It was so cool because the wine tasted as fresh as if it had just been bottled, but it still had all the tertiary aromas that an aged wine should have. And so I got really excited about that. And, we have a 2013 Petite Syrah here that's even longer under screw cap. And, I'm really excited about how
it hasn't lost anything. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So I think it's a really cool closure. It's also, the wine industry is moaning and groaning about how young people aren't drinking wine. I think that's always been true, but it's also always been true that older people do drink wine, and yet we print these labels that you can't read because the print's so small, and then you put a cork in the bottle, and it's hard for some older people to extract a cork, and screw cap's a lot easier for them too. So
I've never even thought about that. Just ease of use. You know, when you work in a restaurant, when people would put the big wax covering on it. I mean, I
Nightmares.
I know a lot of people, and I was one of them, that wouldn't recommend a bottle of wine because some of the wax you had to knock off and it would make a mess at the table. Some you had to cut off. Some you had to go straight in and kind of pull it out like rubber, like Rubber Man. That's actually a thing, the ease of use. And I actually learned with screw caps, I don't open them like this anymore because sometimes you get a stripped one.
Right.
So I've learned to open them from the neck to kind of avoid that problem.
Right.
But I think wines, and I don't know, John, you probably heard this before, but when we were working at a Hospice Tyrone, Ian Blessing, who now makes all the bitters, shout out to Ian.
Oh, yeah.
When he was working at French Laundry, and we were on the SOM team with Hospice Tyrone down in Paso Robles, and we were doing I think it was an Australian seminar. So we were opening up all the wines, and I was opening up 5 cases of something that had cork, and he was opening up 5 cases of something that had screw cap. And it was like an O2 Mourvèdre from Australia. And I was opening up a newer, it wasn't as old, a newer wine. And as you're opening up all these wines, I'm putting aside bottles that weren't even necessarily corked, but were just off. Right. And I'm putting aside all these bottles, and I'm watching right next to me Ian cracking all these screw caps, and every bottle is going back in the box. Right. And it was a eye-opening experience for both of us. And I remember saying to him, do you guys think you'd ever put a wine on the French Laundry wine list that had a screw cap? And he said, absolutely not. And I said, but you just saw in real time how all these bottles tasted the same. But that's the problem. I think he said that Thomas Keller probably wouldn't let us do that. But I've seen it in action. The screw caps are actually great enclosures, and I've never had anything. I don't hold wine that often, so personally, I'm pulling. If I'm drinking something out of screw cap, it's probably something that I've had just like every other wine in my refrigerator that has been there no more than 6 months. Right. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. But you guys at Benessere, you're using corks, I assume.
Corks on the reds and caps on the whites.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Now that I'm general manager, maybe I can change that, but I haven't had the courage to do it yet.
That's the thing. It takes balls, right, to do that. And I work for someone who is into corks and is very traditionalist. And so we do corks, and that's the end of the conversation. Yeah.
We rebel against people using focus groups to brand and, concept new wines and things like that. But it would be really interesting to actually sit down and talk to a mass of people about, does this make you feel like this is any kind of a cheaper wine in any way, shape, or form? Right. It's got a screw cap. And it may, but maybe we're just saying that. I don't know. It's because we're all cork people.
I think it's the kind of wine you're drinking, or the situation, or the time frame, and all those things. For me personally, if it's a wine that I'm planning on drinking within the next 2 or 3 years, and if it's something that is in a particular price point, I love having a screw cap. Yeah. And if it's something I'm working at a restaurant, we're pouring it by the glass, I love a screw cap.
Right.
I don't want to spend any time opening stuff if I'm pouring a rosé, a Sauvignon Blanc, a Viognier, whatever, if it's in screw cap. But I also understand people that are making these very expensive, serious, quote unquote, wines coming from fine wines. I understand the perception of having the cork, and so everyone has to figure it out for themselves. But I think if you actually sat people down and did a side by side, like Ian and I did that day, you'd be pleasantly surprised. Right. But it's sometimes perception is reality. Yep. So if people see a cork, they think, this must time. Be it. Yeah.
There are a lot of ways to look at it, and I definitely agree with all of your points. But I'm thinking about the special occasion wine, the wine you have aged for 10 or 15 years, and you're going to open it for an anniversary or a birthday or something, and then it's corked. Or maybe you're even on a camping trip or something, and not only you don't have another bottle, right? There's nothing else to open, and any winery should accept without any question a corked bottle and replace it. But if it's a 15-year-old bottle, they might not be able to replace it.
Yeah.
And then that's a missed, a ruined special occasion.
Yeah.
And it is 2024. We can't accept change these days.
Yeah.
So, it's moving faster than anybody. I mean, look at the table. There's one cork bottle on the table. It's 16,600.
One bottle that has a cork in it. Right.
Right.
Not a corked bottle. Thank you. And so,
Thank you.
And so the People's Wine Revolution wines, you guys where are you making them?
At Benessere now. I've moved. I started. So
Nice.
We started the brand in 2009 when I was working at Failla Wines.
We should mention you worked. So then you worked with Mike Duane, I think, at Seavey, or Jim Duane at Seavey.
No, so yeah, I left Clos de Bois for Seavey.
Yeah.
But Jim wasn't there yet.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so I was hired as assistant winemaker under Philippe Melka, and after a couple of years, I got promoted to winemaker, and then after a couple of years, I left and I went to Failla.
Yeah.
And Aaron. I will get back to CV.
Yeah,
I finished with CV now. So anyway, I left, and they asked for help replacing me, and I recommended Jeremy Weintraub, who they hired. He's now down in he's working in Paso Robles at Adelaida, and he has his own brand called Sight, which is both of those wines are just fabulous.
Yeah.
But so he did a couple of years at CV, and then Jim Duane started in 2011 and has been there ever since.
Okay.
And both Jeremy and Jim and I were all at Davis together, so
Okay.
that's how we knew each other.
What's it like working for Philippe Melka?
And
And I realize you still have a
I
job.
need to be careful, right?
I mean, people that don't know, Philippe is one of the big wine consultants that has done some wineries here, but also I think Napa is kind of like his stomping ground.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he even had a project. I don't know if he's still doing Long Shadows up in Walla Walla, but he was part of that.
yeah,
So Philippe is a super nice guy. I really like him. He's very open and he takes, as well as trying to make great wines, he tries to mentor younger winemakers. And I think he does a great job with that. I found him to be very hands off at CV, which I loved.
yeah.
I could basically do what I wanted, and that was terrific. But I guess I'd say I bristled at the fact that he then got all the credit for the wines.
Right.
I did everything.
Well, and that's what you're paying for in part with those consultants like that, right? Is to have their name on the bottle,
Right, for sure.
Because then you were at Quixote,
Right.
which I think is Aaron Pott was probably
At the time,
there at the time.
And now it's Philippe.
Oh, interesting. So we did a podcast, but it was with the assistant winemaker, the guy who was a surfer, and he had all the his surfboard was sitting on top of the barrels.
Yeah.
And I remember he had pictures on all the barrels of like Prince and
Right.
we had a fun time actually at Quixote.
It's a fun place.
Incredible architecture too.
Yeah. Not the best for driving a forklift around, but
Right. It was tight.
yeah. And what's his name? Hundertwasser, the architect, Friedenreich Hundertwasser, did not believe in straight lines or corners. And so the barrel room, I guess, the owner put his foot down and said the barrel room has to be square and flat. But anywhere else, it's not flat. And I got into some fun times, some good trouble with a forklift on more than one occasion.
Yeah, I think the only other cellar that I've seen that was tighter was at Paradigm, where Heidi is the winemaker, and it was such a tight space in there. We were kind of curious how they even moved the barrels around,
Right.
and it was kind of like a face this way, grab the. Yeah. It was like working in the galley of a ship.
Somehow, yeah.
They somehow worked it out.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I think you're CV and then Quixote and then
Failla in between. And,
Failla. Which, if people don't know, Failla is a very popular.
Yeah.
The Pinot Noir, especially for me, working out there in the market, is very popular wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Aaron Aaron Jordan's the owner and winemaker, and he really encouraged. Well, I don't know if he encouraged, but if any of his staff said, "Hey, I'd like to start something," he was very supportive of that. And so that's where I started the brand. He didn't. I could just do it. He didn't charge me anything for using the
Doesn't
facility
everybody
and all
have a
that.
passion project?
It
Yeah,
seems like
but
a lot. Yeah,
not everyone lets you
right.
do that. We've, the Pax Maley lets his crew do that. Morgan here at Bedrock lets his crew do that. But not everyone is that nice, John.
It's
and
true.
it is kind of in their best interest to you want to keep people happy because you want to avoid turnover, and you want them to educate themselves while they're working for you. But not everyone feels that way. And there's a job to do.
Well, Bart started Dane Cellars when he was at Lassiter, correct? Or even before. Speaking of, Bart is now, we have to make an appointment to get him on the show because he's had like 18 major articles on his opening in the 10,000 gallon tank in Glen Ellen. It's amazing. I mean, it's this gigantic old tank that's now a tasting room, and he's just gotten the press. He's worked it masterfully.
Oh, good for
him.
Oh,
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had a busy weekend, and now he's suffering on his bike, riding with Chris Cosentino and Dusky Estes. And
right.
How many miles do they cover?
I have it's something insane. No, it's 100 miles a day for 3 days.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
It's a lot of bike riding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he lives up in Diamond A. He climbs that hill. He's fine.
Right.
So
yeah, you have a sore butt, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Getting back on the.
Do you get over to Sonoma County a lot? Do you spend time
Well,
here?
I do. So I should say I keep mentioning, that I started making wine with my wife. I started PWR with my wife. Well, my wife died in 2019.
Oh,
and I thought about thank you. I thought about ending the brand then. And came close to doing it, but then I decided to keep it going, in her honor. So I thought it'd be weird if I said I was dating now, having mentioned my wife.
Right.
So I wanted to get that out there. But I am dating very happily in a relationship with a wonderful woman who lives in Grayton. So I spent a lot of time in that part of Sonoma County.
Yeah.
And I know the county well. I love Sonoma.
There is a difference in the counties.
Oh, yeah.
Napa City controls that county, and you don't hear a whole lot about other parts of it.
Well, Sonoma County's so big. I mean, it covers a lot of territory.
And the varietals here are incredible by comparison.
There's a lot more diversity for sure.
Yeah.
And I was inspired when we at Benessere decided to do this replant and go big on Italian varieties. I thought I'd tour around and see what was doing well around here, and I got tipped off to Orsi in Dry Creek Valley, and went over and checked out their stuff, and it's great. And they're growing all the weird stuff we're growing and more. So it's fun.
And it's interesting. You get up right there, and the climate changes. North of Healdsburg, 20 minutes, all of a sudden you're in a heat zone.
Right.
Zinn loves it.
Yep.
But people think about Dry Creek Valley and they think about Zinn, but then you go to Unti and you see all the cool varietals that he's playing around with, and now you're talking about some Italian stuff. There's
there's some amazing places up in northern Sonoma County.
Yeah.
I mean, just even go over on West Side Highway from Healdsburg. Some of the older places around there.
Yeah, it's not just Pinot and Chardonnay, for sure.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
So you're making are you still doing Petit Syrah?
No. So when I thought I was going to put the brand to bed, I called all the growers I was buying from and said, hey, I'm out.
Yeah.
And then when I said, hey, maybe I'm not putting it to bed, I called the growers back, and some of them said, yeah, come on back. And unfortunately, I lost the Petit Syrah vineyard.
Okay.
But it's that one I discovered when I was at Quixote, actually, because they had Quixote's main focus is Petit Syrah.
Great Petit Syrah.
Yeah. And but they made a second label, Petit Syrah from Sassoon Valley, and one of the first tasks I was assigned at the winery was to call the grower and say we weren't going to do it anymore, because making a great $25 Petit Syrah and showing it to people and then trying to persuade them to buy a great $80 Petit Syrah turned out not to be a very good strategy.
Yeah.
But so I called the grower and said, hey, Quixote's not going to take your grapes anymore, but I will.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Because I thought it was excellent.
And Sassoon, how do you say? I still struggle. Sassoon is sort of become the home of Petit Syrah here in this area. I don't know if that was by choice that they decided they were going to kind of take that on, or if it just happened organically with a lot of Petit Syrah being planted there. And I guess it must have really good conditions for Petit Syrah.
Yeah. And I think it is really good. I don't know the answer to that question and the history of Petit Syrah in the region. It's a really fun region to visit. If you come from Interstate 80, you go past the Solano Community College, and once you're past that campus, there's a stoplight, and it's almost as if when you go through that stoplight, you're going from color to black and white. It's like you're stepping back in time 100 years.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really wild. It's slow. It's bucolic. It's just rolling hills. It's a lot of wine grapes, but there's still cows and. There's some olive groves as well.
Yeah.
It's a real fun area, and Petit Syrah does well there. I'm not sure why, because I think for me the Petit Syrahs I've loved the most have come from the Stag's Leap area where Quixote is, and the Palisades around Calistoga, which are similar to Stag's Leap in terms of being at the base of rugged cliffs. And Sassoon Valley is not like that, but it still does really well with Petit Syrah.
Yeah, I think Camus might have something to do with it.
Yeah, they might.
Are you seeing any friends go up to Lake County?
Both for work and for grapes. Yeah, and for me, I'm a wimp when it comes to that drive. I just can't do it. I was strongly encouraged to apply for a job at Six Sigma, one of the wineries up there, and I was just like, nope. And they're like, no, it's a really good job. They'll take good care of you. You can do this. Nope. I just couldn't face doing that drive twice a day. But that has nothing to do with the quality of the grapes, and they're wonderful. They got some really cool volcanic soils up there. It's warm. So that sort of limits
I thought it was cooler.
Then that's a common misconception, I think, and I used to think that too until you talk to people that actually go up there, and it's not.
Yeah.
Why was Andy Beckstoffer telling us about?
Depending on where you are too, closer to the coast, different than
Well, there's nowhere close to the coast in Lake County.
That's true. Close to the coast of the lake, maybe.
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Interesting. As things change, people do follow the patterns, and everybody's talking about going to Washington. Is Oregon just completely occupied for wine?
No, and I think you're going to see a lot of growth in Oregon. The Willamette may be built out, but Southern Oregon.
Willamette is a separate state.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so far out there that
Right.
it's like totally different.
Yeah.
But Washington's big. I actually made the mistake of my father just moved to Bellingham.
Oh, yeah.
And so I decided, I'll just fly into Bellingham and then I'll just drive over to Walla Walla.
Beautiful drive.
Didn't realize until I got in the car and put on the navigation system that it was over 5-hour drive. So it went basically corner to corner.
But it is beautiful. You got to see so
incredible. I went through snow. I felt like I was in Lake Tahoe, and then once getting into Walla Walla and to Milton Freewater, I almost felt like some of it like I was in Hawaii. It was the rolling green. It was because everything was so green. They have water, which we're just not used to seeing, especially here in the last 10 years. You're used to seeing, you're not used to seeing lush green hills. So it was really nice to see.
Or you see them until like June.
I mean, maybe for a week, John. Maybe like a week after it rains or something.
Well, how were the rocks? I mean, I saw some great photos of Sam on the rocks.
Incredible. I mean, those wines, the wines from that specific region have a very specific profile.
And
so that's the exciting thing about it, but also one of the things that is kind of made me question, like, people will love trying a wine because it has that particular like carbon graphite sort of mineral taste to it, but then do they want to drink that all the time? And but then that's just that little region, and then you go up in the hills, and that's where they're growing the whites, the Viognier, and the Roussanne and Marsanne. So, but the wines are absolutely beautiful. And for people that haven't had them before, it's unique to try something that has that flavor profile.
One of the first wines I ever had was a Chateau Saint Michel.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's the OG, right?
Oh yeah, well I think we were there in the, I don't know, early '80s.
yeah.
And it was. You take some buttery, oaky Chardonnay out to the cabin in the woods and burn some fire and see some deer, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But hey, it was developing. It's all cool.
Yeah. All right. So so you're currently under PWR doing what varietals?
Viognier, Grenache, and Tempranillo.
What's your caseload on those?
About 200.
Okay.
Yeah, total. Total. There's not a lot.
Okay. And it's thank God you're making it there, because you'd piss off a crush pad facility.
I just piss myself off now.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And where can people get the wines if they want to drink them?
The best way is direct from me, and my website's pwrwines.com. And my contact info is on there as well, so you can place an order through the site or just call me, email me. And I've always had a policy. I don't really know how to advertise it, but this is one way. Yeah. I'll deliver in Sonoma County and Napa County, so just let me know.
And that site once again?
PWRwines.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you on social media?
I am barely. So on both Facebook and Instagram at PWR Wines. I tried Twitter long before it became X, and
it's still Twitter. Don't worry.
Yeah. I'm not a Twitter guy myself.
The times they are changing.
Right.
And then tell us about Benessere. If people want to come out there, what's the tasting room situation?
Yeah, so we are by appointment, which is both a county requirement and because of our size.
County requirement? No?
Yeah, the winery definition ordinance that passed in 1990 basically required any winery that opened after that to be by appointment only.
Wow.
For pre-pandemic, I'd say most wineries in Napa ignored that. Post-pandemic, they realized that it actually helps them figure out staffing and everything, and that's how we feel about it. We need to know you're coming, or we won't be ready to give you the experience that we want you to have.
Yeah.
But that said, it's not difficult to get an appointment.
Well, sorry to interrupt. Just let me briefly explain that to people who aren't in the wine industry, because I deal with that here. Yeah. Is that there's people that will make a reservation a month, weeks ahead of time. So you make your schedule knowing how many people are coming in and how many appointments you have that day. So then if someone comes in off the street, wants to taste, we of course always want to say yes. But you do that at the peril of then maybe ignoring or not paying as much attention to someone that had the forethought of making a reservation and was really excited about coming. And so there's always that balance that you have to walk of hey, we want to share our wines with new people, but we also want to honor the fact that there was people that made a reservation, and we want to take really good care of them. So just so customers out there understand, it's not that we don't want to take new people. It's then if we get involved in a conversation and we notice now we're starting to ignore the people that have had a reservation for a month, there's a business decision that needs to be made there. So I just want to explain, it's not because we're trying to be exclusionists or anything.
I mean, I just remember in the late 80s driving up Highway 29 and stopping at, Gergich first, then over to Heights, then run to Silver Oak and Groth. And, that was our day.
Right.
No appointments, but hey.
Yeah.
Yep.
There were no
not anymore, John.
There was no GPS.
Not anymore.
Nope.
We were laughing about how the hell we got around France without
I know.
GPS.
Well, the Michelin maps, right?
Absolutely. And, fold them up, and then Joan got a Garmin.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
That was revolutionary. And take the second exit at the roundabout.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean... She's so good at it. She's the navigator.
Nice.
And I just listen to her, so I don't try to do anything.
I
did get a speeding ticket.
Oh, no.
It was only $45, $20
Did you have to pay in cash?
accessory fee or admin fee from Hertz. 'Cause
Oh.
they had to work with
yeah.
the Republic of France to send me my bill. And then they automatically take it out of your card anyway. So it's all a scam. But yeah, I did get a ticket over there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, tell us if people want to do a tasting at Benessere. Is there food and wine pairing options?
Yeah.
Is it just the wines? Is it outdoor seating as well as indoor?
We have a beautiful patio out front, which is surrounded by one of our smaller vineyard blocks. So you're tasting among the vines, and we're right. Like I said, the property abuts the Napa River, so we're middle of the valley floor. So the traffic from 29 and Silverado Trail you don't hear.
Right.
It's very, very quiet and nice.
You're on Big Tree
Road, which is right behind the Cal Fire Station. And we do have
nice
indoor
spot
seating as well.
in the earth.
Yeah,
Seriously,
it
nice.
is.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
We offer charcuterie plates, cheese plates, and guests are welcome to bring in their own food as well.
Okay.
So, yeah,
That's a rarity.
yeah. It's we try to make it really fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think you can ask your sister how much she and the guests enjoyed the party yesterday, which was all out on the patio, but it was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Great time. And
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Awesome.
Any shout outs for friends? What's coming up? Events that you want to cover?
Oh gosh, I should have prepared.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I was hoping to see. I thought on my way back I'd swing by Boucher and see my friend Chris Kajani, the winemaker
cool.
there.
Yeah.
But she's coming back from Vegas today, so she's not there to say hello to you. But I already mentioned Jim and Jeremy.
Any Syrah producers out there that you want to maybe make a pitch to?
So, well, I will say you asked where they can get my wine. I delivered my last case of Syrah, other than what I'm keeping for myself. So Syrah is maybe my favorite variety to make. And in 2020, the smoky year, got some fruit off of Old Lakeville Highway from the Flokini Vineyard.
Yeah.
Flokini Vineyard, sorry. And not smoky.
I was going to say that
it
probably is very clean right
it
there.
was very clean. It's just as I'm
Keller
proud of this Grenache,
bottled
I was super
that
proud
year.
of that Syrah.
Yeah.
And so Avenage, the wine store next to the Mystic Theater in Petaluma, has the last case available for sale. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah. I have 5 cases, but don't tell anybody.
Right.
Great town, great theater.
Yeah,
So go to Petaluma, buy wine. It's a good thing. Brian, shout outs?
I mean,
What's coming up?
we have so many things coming up. I don't even know where to start. So
Vinyl
I'll
Sundays,
just let
baby.
people know if you follow. Thank you. If you want to follow Winery 16600 on Instagram, do that. You can kind of see what we're doing. If you're a wine club member, you've gotten an email, but we've got a packed summer with all kinds of fun events. I'm actually meeting on Monday with the Fairmont. I know Laurel, Glenn, and Winery 16600 are going to pair up for a winemaker dinner at the Fairmont coming up in August.
Fun.
Yeah.
And we've got all kinds of vinyl Sundays lined up with great musical guests and great food.
Any names you can drop?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean,
Embargoed for the moment.
if you're going to the Moon Mountain District tasting that's going on Saturday, June 1st, up at the Monte Rosso Vineyard, I encourage you to get tickets for that. I think Antonio Galone is doing a whole seminar and tasting. You can try all kinds of wines from up at Moon Mountain. And then if you want to come down and join us, we'll be at the Fairmont at the Sonoma Mission Inn starting at 5:00. Tony Saunders will be playing music.
Oh, nice.
And
Man,
we'll have
that band is great. Wow.
I mean, I love hearing him warm up playing bass because you can hear it for a mile. And you can feel it for a mile, I should say. It just reverberates
Where
through
did
your whole body.
Renee Royal end up?
She ended up at St. Superi. I think,
Vineyard management still?
yeah, I mean, that's what she does. So I don't know what Monte Rosso is going to do going forward. They'll find...
They'll miss her. I mean,
of course.
she ran the whole place.
Yeah.
And wonderfully. I mean, you've been up to Moon Mountain?
I never have.
What an AVA.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
It's amazing.
Great wines.
Cool place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. But if you want to come celebrate Moon Mountain, we're going to take over the bar. So we're going to pour Moon Mountain Grenache and Marsanne and
With-
Cabernet and at the food truck.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's no charge for that. Just show up, listen to some good music, eat some food, and drink some of our wines.
Sounds horrible, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
June 1st, 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they're just starting. It'll be the second day that they're doing music. So
And I know this is going to be out Friday, but
no, not necessarily.
we have another in the can, right?
Well,
Couple weeks.
we're promoting Moon Mountain, so I think we're might have a podcast out before this that is Moon Mountain focus. We want to get everyone up on that hill, John.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say tonight is the first Sonoma Farmers Market party.
Oh, it's a Tuesday night
Tuesday
party.
night,
You
yeah.
got to come for that sometime. That's a really fun time.
It's a
We
blast.
take over the whole square. I think it used to be a farmers market, and then they just gave up and just started calling it the Tuesday night party
But
because
it is an organic farmers market. You
Yeah.
can buy fresh
1% of people go there for that. They go there to listen to music, eat good food, and drink wine, John. And if they happen to slip a piece of broccoli in their purse, then that's great.
Sounds like fun.
piece of
Yeah.
broccoli. Huh?
Yeah.
That's not exactly my first choice, but
Well,
it's Ringo Starr's first choice.
yeah, Friday morning is the actual real farmers market. Tuesday night is just turned into a free-for-all, which is great.
But it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Thank you so very much for coming over.
Thanks for having me. This has been a real pleasure.
Oh,
Real
thank
fun
you.
talking.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
And really enjoyed the wines. I don't.
Beautiful.
Did I get the?
I poured you the Petite Syrah,
Which I haven't
again, this is
tried, so,
2013 Petite Syrah.
I was amazed
Yeah.
at this wine.
Another variety we've talked about a lot that big tannins and needs time in the bottle, and this has had the time. So
Oh hell yeah!
yeah.
Thank you.
And again, 11 years under screw cap, so it's
There's no comparison. I mean, you can't.
John, be careful.
It aged beautifully.
It did. I know. You don't got to fight with me.
I'm not fighting with anybody.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week
Yeah.
or whenever. Thanks. Enjoy.